The following lectures are intended to introduce you to the basic knowledge about the United Kingdom. In the framework of the first lecture, we will have a look at the UK geographical position and its composition. We will consider the main geographical entities, landscapes, as well as climate features and mineral resources. In the second lecture, we will consider the following questions. The first question: the first inhabitants and monuments that remained from that period. Then we will have a look at the Celts, who came to succeed them. What culture did they have? And what happened to them later? We will try to answer these questions. The next landmark in the history of the Isles is related to the Roman invasion and inclusion of the country into the Roman Empire. What happened to the Romans and why did they leave the country? The next question will be devoted to the Anglo-Saxon invasion, to invasion of Vikings, and the Norman invasion.
Great Britain, geographical position and mineral resources. The British Isles, which include Great Britain, Ireland, and a lot of smaller islands, are situated off the northwestern coast of Europe. The total area is 244 square kilometers. The population of the country is over 67 million people. Great Britain is made up of England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. The official name of the country is the United Kingdom of Great Britain and the Northern Ireland. The capital of the state is London. The northwest and west of Great Britain are surrounded by the Atlantic Ocean. The eastern part of the country is washed by the North Sea. The southern eastern tip of Great Britain is separated from France by the English Channel. The Northern Ireland is separated from Great Britain by the Northern Channel and is washed by the Atlantic Ocean. There are over 5,000 islands in the system of the British Isles. The most famous of them are Isle of Man, Hebrides, Orkney Islands, and Channel Islands. The most important sea routes pass through the English Channel and the North Sea, linking Europe with Americas and other continents. The advantageous geographical position of Great Britain created favorable conditions for the development of shipping, trade, and the economy. From south to north, Great Britain stretches for over 900 kilometers, and from east to west only for about 500 kilometers. In fact, everything in the UK is rather small. The longest rivers are the Severn, with a length of 354 kilometers, flowing along the border between England and Wales, tributaries of which include the Avon, famed by Shakespeare, and the River Thames, with a length of 346 kilometers, which flows eastward to the Port of London. The swiftest flowing river in the British Isles is the Spey. There are many lakes in Great Britain. On the northwest side of the Pennine system lies the Lake District, containing the beautiful lakes which give it its name. This district is widely known for its association with the history of English literature, and especially with the name of William Wordsworth, the founder of the Lake School of Poets. The most important range of mountains is the Pennine chain. Rainfall in the Pennines is abundant. Across the north end of the Pennines there are the grassy Cheviot Hills, near the Scottish border. In north-west England lie the Cambrian Mountains. Wales is a country of hills and mountains, deeply cut by river valleys. The Cambrian Mountains cover all the territory of Wales. 2/3 of the population lives in South Wales. In the upland areas, sheep are the basis of the rural economy. In the lowlands, farming predominates. Geographically, Scotland may be divided into three major physical regions: the Highlands, the Southern Uplands, and the Central Lowlands. The Highlands lie to the west of the line. To the south, there are the Grampian Mountains. The economy of the region is dominated by agriculture. The Central Lowland is the leading industrial area of Scotland. In the Northern Ireland, the chief mountains are the Antrim Mountains in the northeast and the Sporran Mountains in the northwest. Britain is as far north as Siberia. For example, Edinburgh is 56 degrees north of the equator, the same latitude as Moscow, yet its climate is generally mild and temperate because of the Gulf Stream, which brings warm water and air across the Atlantic from the Gulf of Mexico. The climate in the UK is usually described as cool, temperate, and humid. During a normal summer, the temperature sometimes rises above 25 degrees in the south. Winter temperatures below 5 degrees are rare. It seldom snows heavily in winter. Snow doesn't remain for long, except in the Scottish mountains, where skiing is possible. Frost is rare. January and February are usually the coldest months. July and August are the warmest. Still, the wind may bring winter cold in spring or summer. Sometimes it brings whirlwinds or hurricanes. Rainfall is more or less even throughout the year. The wind brings rain from the Atlantic to the hills of the west. This means that the western parts of Great Britain are wetter than the east, which is fairly sheltered. London is drier than continental cities. Its weather may be unpredictable, but it is not practically wet. The northern mountains have much more rain and snow. More generally, the southern parts of England and Wales are a little warmer, sunnier, and less misty than the rest. The driest period is from March to June, and the wettest months are from October to January. So we may say that the British climate has three main features. It is mild, humid, and changeable. That means that it is never too hot or cold, too wet or dry. This humid and mild climate is good for plants. The trees and flowers begin to blossom early in spring. In the British homes has been no central heating up to till recently. The fireplaces are often used, but the coal is not used as it is very expensive. Britain has no good coal now and imports it. Many schools and universities have no central heating either, and the floors, they are made of stone. The British bedrooms are especially cold. Sometimes electric blankets or hot water bottles are used. The rise of Britain as an industrial nation in the late 18th and early 19th centuries was due to the presence of mineral resources. It possessed abundant supplies of coal and iron ore. It had enough copper, lead, and tin. But in the course of the last 100 years or so, the situation has changed. Many of Britain's most valuable deposits have been worked out. Coal has been worked in Britain for 700 years. Traditionally, Britain is a coal exporting country. The most important coal deposits are found in the Midlands, central Scotland. Oil deposits. The largest fields producing oil are Brent, Forties, and others. Iron industry. Iron ore is one of the most abundant metals in the Earth's crust. But all the iron ore for the metallurgical industry of the country is now imported from Sweden, Spain, Canada, etc. Lecture 2: The Early History of the UK. In prehistoric times, Britain was joined to the rest of Europe. The first people and many animals came there over dry land. The first inhabitants of the island are the Iberians, or megalithic people, who lived in the western part of the country. The ancient people left behind impressive monuments, of which Stonehenge and Avebury are most remarkable. Stonehenge is located in the middle of Salisbury Plain, to the northwest of Southampton. The other famous ancient site is located in Wiltshire, the village of Avebury. In the period from the 6th to the 3rd century before Christ, new invaders, mainly from France, came to England. They were the Celts. The arrival of the Celts from Central Europe opened up a new and important page of the British history. The name Britain comes from the name of a Celtic tribe known as the Britons, who settled in the country. The Celts spoke the Celtic languages. The influence of the Celts was greatest in Wales, Scotland, and Ireland. The most interesting description of the life of the Celts was given by Julius Caesar, the Roman ruler who first invaded Britain in 55 before Christ. He tells us that the Celts were tall and blue-eyed. They wore long moustaches, but no beards. The Celts had no towns, they lived in villages. They kept large herds of cattle and sheep. The Celts worshipped nature. They also believed in many spirits who lived in the rivers, lakes, mountains, and forests. The Celts believed in another life after death. Their priests were called Druids. In 55 before Christ, a Roman army of 10,000 men, with Julius Caesar at the head of it, crossed the Channel and invaded Britain. Julius Caesar didn't stay in Britain, he left the country and received a promise from the Celts that they would pay a regular tribute to Rome. In 43 AD, the country was conquered by the Romans again. This occupation of Britain continued to the beginning of the 5th century. Not all of Britain was in the hands of the Romans. In the south and southeastern parts, Roman influence was greater, while north and west of the country remained much untouched. The Romans imposed Roman peace which stopped tribal wars and protected Britain from the attacks of outsiders, the Picts in the north, Saxons from overseas. A high wall was built in the north. It was called Hadrian's Wall. The Romans built towns. York, Lincoln, and London became the chief Roman towns. But together with a high civilization, the Romans brought exploitation and slavery to the British Isles. In the 3rd and 4th centuries, the power of the Roman Empire gradually weakened. The unproductive labor of the slaves led to the economic decline of the empire. The struggle of the exploited against the slave owners weakened the Roman Empire too. Roman culture and civilization had a positive influence on the development of the country. Early in the 5th century, the Roman legions were recalled from Britain to defend the central provinces of the Roman Empire from the attacks of the barbarian tribes. They didn't return to Britain, and the Celts were left alone in the land. The fall of the Roman Empire is regarded as the end of the ancient history. Then came the Middle Ages, which lasted for 12 centuries, from the second half of the 5th century till the middle of the 17th century. After the departure of the Romans, the Celts remained independent for some time, but soon the country began to be attacked by Germanic tribes from the continent. They were the Jutes, the Saxons, and the Angles. The Jutes landed in Kent. The Angles settled to the north of the Thames, and soon the country began to be called the land of the Angles, later Angleland, and consequently England. The Saxons settled in the south, southwest, and partially east, forming the ancient kingdoms of Wessex, Sussex, and Essex. In the 7th century, there were 7 kingdoms: Essex, or East Saxons; Sussex, or South Saxons; Wessex, or West Saxons; East Anglia, or East Angles; Kent, Mercia, and Northumbria. The Anglo-Saxons settled in small tribal villages or towns. Many of the Celts fled to Wales, Cornwall, the northern part of Britain and Ireland. Thus, the Celts continued their culture, language, and Christianity, which was brought by the Romans. The northern part of the Britain was the home of the Picts and Scots. After the conquest of the Picts by the Scots in the 9th century, this northern territory became to be called Scotland, and the United Scottish Kingdom was formed in the 11th century. In the course of the struggle of the Celts against the Anglo-Saxons, many legends and stories about King Arthur and his knights came to light. The Anglo-Saxons were pagans and worshipped different gods. As a result of the conquest, the Anglo-Saxons made up the majority of the population in Britain, and their customs, religion, and language became predominant. For 3 centuries, a struggle went on between the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms. At the end of the 8th century, another branch of Germanic people began to attack Britain. They were called the Danes. The Danes were brilliant sailors, well armed. In 793, the Danes carried out their first raids on Britain. The Danish raids were successful because the kingdoms of England had neither a regular army nor a fleet. The Danes raided the eastern coast of England, and by the middle of the 9th century, all English kingdoms were defeated. Wessex had united the small Anglo-Saxon kingdoms under the reign of King Alfred, who became known in English history as Alfred the Great. In the 10th century, the united Anglo-Saxon feudal monarchy was consolidated. The areas that constituted the Danelaw lie in the northern and eastern England. They were long occupied by the Danes and other Norsemen. In the 10th and 11th centuries, the Danes' invasion were resumed, and from 1013 to 1042 the Danish royal power triumphed in England. In 1042 the House of Wessex was restored to power in England, when Edward the Confessor was elected king. In the 9th century, while the Danes were plundering England, another branch of Northmen who were related to the Danes were doing the same along the northern coast of France. They were called the Normans. In 1066, William, the Duke of Normandy, began to gather an army to invade Britain. He was a relative of Edward the Confessor, who died that year, and he claimed to have the English kingdom as his inheritance. At that time Harold was elected King of England. 1066 was a crucial year for the Saxon king and for the history of the English. Harold had to fight against two enemies at the same time. In the south, William of Normandy was preparing to land in England. In the north, in Yorkshire, the Danes renewed their attacks against England. After a hard and long struggle, Harold and his brothers were killed in the Battle of Hastings. William I, or William the Conqueror, became King of England. He ruled for 21 years. The Norman conquest had social and cultural implications.